Okay, and we are live for week 4 of the Amateur Analysts Weekly AA Meeting Sports Podcast. This week we're going to be hitting a lot of college football, back to the roots, back where we started out with it. A little bit of NFL, a little bit of baseball. Basketball, not quite yet. That's coming up in a few weeks for the start of the NBA season, so look forward to that. Tonight we got three guys with me. I got Kyle Meredith, Perry Doobie, and I got Trevor Peck, as well as a special guest. I'll let them run through and say hi. Kyle?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Get ready for some heavy college football stuff. We'll get into some conference stuff. It'll be fun.
Doobie.
Hi, my name is Perry Doobie. I'm not wearing a backwards hat today, which is a change, but I am drinking Canadian beer because that's all I keep in my fridge.
And Trevor, introduce yourself as well as your special guest.
Trevor Peck. I'm here with Chubb in Athens, Georgia. He's looking forward to a big game this weekend.
He's going to get strangled by headphones before the podcast is over.
I'm sure my girlfriend will be real happy. He actually he cost us about $100 today because he was throwing up. So things are going strong in the Peck household right now.
Hey, go Knowles.
Well, I also got to say before Palmer kills me, this weekend I got in a little bit of trouble at the bars, which isn't unusual for me. But I was asking people when they said that they watched the podcast, I'd ask them why, and apparently that's not the correct response. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, so we had some classmates like, yeah, we watch it, and I was like, Trevor, they're watching the podcast. She's like, why? Like, don't do that.
No, thank you. No, that's awesome. Just what?
Yep, that was it. All right, well, we're going to get into it because we got a lot to talk about tonight. Start off with the college football picks. It was not a particularly good week for really anybody. Our spread picks, I don't believe we had anybody go over 500. The best was a tie between Trevor Doobie and Serial, all at 10 and 13 for the spread picks. And on the straight up picks, it was, let's see, it looks like Kyle Meredith at 19 and 4 had the best week. I myself had the worst week down at 16 and 7. So that puts the overalls for the straight up picks. A little bit of change in the leaderboard there. Doobie and Kyle, 77 and 15 in the lead. Myself and Trevor, 76 and 16 right behind him. Serial, who did not pick the first week and is not here tonight, has 0 correct games because that's what happens when you're not here.
Oh, by the way, I do want to just call out Serial. Serial's not here because he's delusional and thinks that he's actually an owner of the Packers, because that entire fan base thinks because they paid like $100 for a piece of paper they actually own part of the team. So enjoy your little delusional fantasy while you sit in some Packer bar with a bunch of other people who love cheese.
It actually gets better than that. So the bar in Orlando that's a Packers bar is called Sideshow, which is basically a clown bar. So that's fun.
I've been there. It's a very odd bar.
Okay, so we've established that Serial is an awful human being, a clown, and missed all of his picks for the entire season. So we're going to move on, let everyone talk about their worst and best or favorite and least favorite pick. Kyle, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Palmer said 19 and 4 for the week straight up. Not as good against the spread. I was really happy with my Northwestern pick. I kind of figured they wouldn't cover. Sure enough, they didn't. I think I was the only one of the group to make that pick. Granted, there was plenty of others where I was the only one to make a call and everybody else got it right. I hate my Auburn pick, without a doubt. I'm never in a close spread like that with Auburn. They don't even know who their quarterback is. They're awful. I'm going to stay away from the Tigers.
Doobie, how'd you do?
I didn't do particularly well, not as well as I hoped I would. Kyle, to be fair, oh, you're right. Yeah, the Northwestern one was the one that you got wrong and everyone else got right. I guess we all love Ball State. I didn't do particularly well. The one that I'm easily the most pissed off at is Georgia Tech. I think we all forgot the age-old adage of if Georgia Tech is ranked preseason, expect them to underperform in every single way possible until maybe when they face Georgia at the end of the season. If Georgia Tech is ranked preseason, they are prepared for by every other team before the season, and especially in those early season games, they always disappoint. I don't know why we all thought that Notre Dame was just a really good team and beat Georgia Tech. Clearly, Georgia Tech's not a very good team, so picking them -8 against Duke at Duke, Cutcliffe's a good coach, shouldn't have done that. I proud of, I think you guys can start calling me the Pac-12 Sage or the Master of the Pac-12. Once again, I picked an upset when everyone else took the favorite on the line. I took Utah straight up. Clearly, that worked out pretty well for me in a 62-20 win. Oregon's garbage. Utah actually improved my perception of the Pac-12 with that game. So I'm not going to be as down on them as I was. That being said, I'll be sure to keep picking upsets in that conference because I seem to predict all of them right, except ASU covering against USC. I was clearly wrong on that one.
All right, Trevor.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do great this week. I think my most disappointing picks, not going with UCLA. I honestly thought UCLA was the better team. I just went with Arizona because I thought they were talented, and sometimes, I don't know, I just go with my gut, and obviously there it shows me why I should never try to overthink things. I'm not that good at it. And I do like, we were talking about it a little bit before the show came on, but I think our Texas and then the Texas Tech picks, those were good picks. I know you did the same thing. I like what Strong's doing there. I hope they give him some time. But yeah, it wasn't a great week for me. So.
Yeah, the Texas Tech game, I'm just going to quickly say, was so frustrating for me. I had that straight up. It was not a hopeful pick. I really believe Texas Tech was going to win that game. I do not believe in TCU at all. And a ridiculous tipped pass receiver happens to be there to catch it. Play kind of screwed me on that one. I had a $15 bet that would have won me $85 if Texas Tech had pulled that off. So that was a little frustrating.
Yeah, as far as TCU goes, I feel like I haven't mentioned this in past weeks, and it's only fair that I bring it up now. If I'm going to criticize Notre Dame for their attrition and all the injuries and what they're losing, I've got to say that I don't think TCU can pull through on what I predicted them to do preseason. They've probably lost even more than Notre Dame, although it's not all due to injuries. Some of it is just stupidity and getting suspended. It's going to be tough for me to see them carrying out what I picked them to be the preseason national champion without any semblance of a defense because of the injuries that they've taken up to this point and their suspensions.
If Dawson keeps going for 200-plus yards through the air, then they'll be fine in the Big
Yeah,
Twelve.
that kid's unreal.
He's special. I do think, I think a lot of it is coming off as TCU having a poor defense. I think that's true. They've had injuries and suspensions you were talking about. I also think Lubbock's a tough place to play, and Texas Tech deserves a lot of credit. They played pretty well. They've got some explosive players, the guys that they have working out of the backfield. And then that quarterback, was it Mansholm or?
Mahomes, yeah.
Mahomes. I mean, that was, it's that word gutsy that I don't really like hearing thrown around, but the guy obviously was going through an injury, and, I mean, he really played his heart out. That was impressive. I had a lot of fun watching that game. That's the type of game that I think makes you keep coming back to college football.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thoughts on that being game of the year so far?
It's definitely mine.
There was a few this week that were really good.
That was good. The UF comeback was good, but that catch in the end zone off a tip pass was like unreal. I mean,
that was a heartbreaker.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, and here's another thing. I think we're all judging, like I said earlier with TCU, but last week some of us jumped on the Notre Dame bandwagon before Georgia Tech went out this week. We have no idea Texas Tech could go 11-1. That could be their only loss. They could be a playoff-worthy team who doesn't get in like Baylor was last year. So it's too early to tell. That being said, what I saw in that game, what I was able to watch of it, was it seemed like the Texas Tech quarterback had so much time, he was almost not even making an effort to move at a fast pace. He was just kind of moving around like he was in sludge in the backfield, and literally I watched him walk into the end zone from 10 yards out at one point.
I think part of it, he couldn't do much more than walk. It didn't seem like. I think he was really hurting, which makes that performance so much more impressive, which is why it was such a heartbreaking loss. But yeah, that was a great game. I had a lot of fun watching that one. I was jumping up and down and yelling and waking up the neighbors and stuff. So.
All right, we're going to move right along here. Got to get down the agenda, so we're going to move on to most impressive team of the week. Kyle, start us off.
I was impressed with Michigan. Every single time I flipped back over, they were in the red zone scoring points. I think they had 31 at the half. Absolutely put it on BYU. Harbaugh's got his boys playing. I don't think anybody expected them to, compete in the Big Ten right away, but they're looking really good, and that's a good W. Obviously, that loss at the beginning of the Utah hurt. If they could get some above-average QB play from that Iowa transfer, they're probably in a whole different situation, and we're talking about them a lot more.
Doobie, who impressed you the most?
I'm going a little bit out of the box here. West Virginia really impressed me. They played a Maryland team that's not very good, but they have absolutely demolished everyone they played this year. I'm starting to think that they actually could be the dark horse playoff contender right now in that Big 12. We saw it last year with TCU and Baylor. In my mind, right now, if I had to pick the Big 12, I still pick Baylor to win it. But I'm almost neck and neck between West Virginia and TCU and Oklahoma. Granted, we'll get to see a lot more this weekend when West Virginia plays Oklahoma, but I would not be surprised. They've got an electric wide receiver out there, an electric running back, and their quarterback, as much as Oregon does not have this favor, their quarterback situation seems to be pretty plug and play. If Clint Trickett could go out there and be a 4,000 yard a year guy, I think that probably Palmer, you could go out there and throw for at least 2,000. They've got some weapons, and their defense looks pretty decent. Right now, they're ranked in the top 5 in defensive efficiency in the nation. So I don't think that will continue, but I think we're going to be impressed with them going forward.
All right, Trevor, what you got?
Michigan looks really good. Utah's the obvious choice there, I think. Yeah. Just putting up that figure against a ranked team, even if, maybe people are saying Oregon's not what they thought they were, that certainly seems to be the case, but still, that's just a lot of points. And then I thought, UCLA goes back to my most disappointing pick for myself. They looked pretty good. I hate saying that, too. I got some buddies that are huge UCLA fans, so it kills me. But I think they're a really tough team. They looked good.
All right, am I allowed to be impressed by how much of a choke artist the Texas special teams are? It's impressive to me at this point. I'm actually more impressed by that than anything else. It's absurd at this point. We'll get to that, I'm sure, in a minute. We're going to move on to most disappointing team of the week. Kyle?
Well, I've got GT in there. Doobie pretty much covered Georgia Tech's disappointment, and we'll talk about their skill positions here in a couple of categories. But I was disappointed by Virginia for a little bit of time. They were hanging in there, and now I'm starting to chalk up for a little bit. I was like, their schedule's tough. Maybe they're a good football team. I don't think that much anymore. They got to get rid of their coach. They need somebody else in there. My parents won't like to hear that. They're UVA grads, but I don't think London is the answer. So Virginia definitely disappointed me in that ass beating.
Doobie.
Yeah, I had Virginia as my most disappointing team as well. It could have been the whole ACC. It could have been the state of Virginia in the ACC because Virginia Tech also went out and lost to ECU. But since, Kyle, you went in on Virginia, I'll go on LSU. I thought that was a very disappointing performance out in Syracuse. If LSU was not in the SEC, I think that would be judged in a completely different way. Kyle, you brought this up to us in a text message we were going on earlier. But, a 10-point win in Syracuse, I don't know why that gives you a bump. With the way Fournette was running, it almost makes me have less faith in that team, who I do think is a playoff quality team, because it's starting to look to me like the Florida State offense has in the first few weeks, where you've got one guy and not much else. So I was not very pleased with the way LSU performed. I thought they'd cover that 25 or 24.5 point spread easy, and it ended up just being 10.
Right on to Trevor. Who you got?
So Oregon seems fairly obvious, but I'm going to go Tennessee. I know that I've mentioned that before. But the reason this one stuck out to me is it really seems like Butch Jones maybe just have some legitimate in-game problems that makes me question whether or not he's going to get them over the hump. Obviously, his recruiting's been phenomenal, but there were some legitimate game management issues, I felt like. I know that he cited analytics, but I don't know. It's tough for me to try to question these guys. I know that they've forgotten more football than I ever knew, but I think that they got issues. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. heard a stat today that there's only been three
and there are two of
games
them, yeah.
where there's been 13-point leads in the fourth quarter that have been blown, and Tennessee's two of them. I just don't like that's got to be on the coach at some point.
Right.
And just they did it last year. They were up 9 in the fourth quarter and lost. And this one was even worse. I mean, 4th and 14, you have 3 guys right in that area, and you let one guy block 3 at once to let that Florida guy spring for a touchdown. It was just god-awful. As Florida State guys and as Georgia guys, it was entirely depressing to me. I mean, I felt like Florida State had lost a game when that happened almost. It was really depressing.
So this is a conversation I have with people a lot on this kind of thing, is when they say they want their rivals to lose a lot. As a Florida State guy, to me, we need Florida to be ranked. We don't have a good schedule. If Florida's going to be ranked when we play them, I mean, that's all the better in my opinion. That's going to help us. I want to beat them when they're up. If we beat them when they're down, who cares? They already have been losing all season. But if they have some hope and we can take it away from them, I enjoy that way more when they come to Tallahassee, or if we can go beat them even in this fall.
Listen, if they're going to win, then I'd rather they be undefeated, but I don't want them to ever win. If I'm watching a game, I'm never going to sit there and go, I hope the Gators win so they can be undefeated when they play us. I'd be more like, I hope the Gators lose and somehow are undefeated when we play.
If you could have it both ways, it would be pretty nice.
But this year, I really don't think it matters. Even if the Gators are undefeated, the only way we get in the playoffs at Florida State is if we go undefeated. So it doesn't matter if the Gators have 0 wins or if they have, all of them. I think the only way we get in is as an undefeated team because our schedule is so weak. So it doesn't really matter how good they are. Although that would bring up the hype for the game, which would be nice.
I was going to say the one thing about having your rival be ranked, just from a pragmatic point of view, is that if they're coming in unranked, they're going to be fired up because it's a rivalry game. They're going to be excited. They have something to still win from that. But your guys, I mean, you always assume that they're going to be amped to play the game. I actually think that those guys, I mean, they're basically professionals at this. They know how to get excited for every game. But to the extent that that's an element, I think you do want both teams to be competitive just so that your team comes in aware, hey, these guys could upset us, and they come to play. I think you don't want to go into a sleeper situation, which is what Palmer and I were talking about it earlier. When South Carolina is shitty, it's almost more scary to play them because you're afraid that, maybe they're looking to the next game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're gonna keep it moving here, and we're actually gonna switch to our topics because Doobie gave us a nice lead-in talking about Fournette in that game and how he might have to carry him. We're gonna talk about what would it take in this day and age for a running back to win a Heisman Trophy. With the way it's just been so catered toward quarterbacks the last few years, it seems like running back just has to do something absurdly superhuman to do it. So we're going to talk about each person. What do you think they have to do, and what running backs this year you think have a shot at it? So we'll start with you, Kyle.
All right. Well, first of all, I'll say that I think this year is definitely an outlier in the fact that it's not as hard this year as it might have been in the past or will be in the future. Truth of the matter is, quarterbacks aren't really as good this year. I mean, it's that simple. And usually, the quarterback is one leading his team to an 11-1 or a 12-0 record, something along those lines. And, this year, there's nobody that's sticking out, at least not yet. I mean, you got Fournette, you got Chubb, and you got Dalvin Cook. Those are my 3 running backs that I feel like are in the hunt if it was actually going to happen this year. I mean, I don't know when I put numbers on it, but I think you got to rush for more than 200 yards a game if you're going to be a Heisman candidate as a running back. But, I mean, who knows this year? If the quarterbacks keep being average, then I think the running back's got a chance. If it's not a running back, the receiver that I've got in the hunt is definitely Doxson from TCU, the wide receiver. He's absolutely gone off pretty much every game. Travolta's his main guy. Nobody can shut him down, and neither can the TCU defense. They can't shut anybody down either. But so yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I think it's definitely hard, but it's easier. It's going to be easier this year than probably any other year that we've seen recently.
All right, Doobie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Kyle, I could not agree with you more. Any other year, I would say that this isn't a very high likelihood, but this year I actually see it as a possibility. If I had to name anyone who weren't running backs who actually had a shot, and this shows at this point how low a chance I think anyone else has. Doxson's a good pick, but if you lose faith in TCU, there's no way a receiver wins the Heisman if their team isn't in the playoffs.
Sure.
So the only guys I can really see are right now, and this just speaks to it, as quarterbacks, Chad Kelly, of Ole Miss, Baker Mayfield of Oklahoma, and Seth Russell of Baylor. I don't think any of those guys make the playoffs, and I don't think any of them are able to sustain what they have. I mean, Baylor, Seth Russell is probably the best chance out of any of them, but I just think it's a really down year for quarterbacks. The best quarterback is the kid out at Cal, and Goff.
Right.
I don't think he stands even remotely a chance of being a playoff contender, so I don't think he's got even a shot at it. So with the running backs, I think you got to say Fournette is the formidable favorite going forward right now. That being said, I think LSU takes a loss, and I think Chubb at the end of the season will vault him. I think Chubb is the favorite for the Heisman right now. But those two guys, if I had to pick anyone, are my two favorites. I've got three others that I could see as dark horses could work their way into the picture. Dalvin Cook, if is able to, if the Florida State passing game gets on track and you're able to draw some DBs out, he could be good. Devontae Booker out in Utah might actually be, other than Fournette, the most talented running back in the country. He's a great player, and if Utah's a playoff team, he could be good. And then a guy everyone forgets about because Josh Rosen's the chosen one is Paul Perkins out at UCLA. If UCLA does sustain, he's the reason, not Rosen. I mean, he went for 3 touchdowns this week. He's rushed for over 100 in every other game. I really do like Perkins a lot. So I think it's going to be a running back, and I think it's going to be Chubb.
All right, Trevor, I'm sure you like the Chubb pick.
Well, I was going to say I'm a little biased going back to our guest speaker. His full name is actually Chubb for Heisman. That is his full name. So I got to say I have a dog in this fight in more ways than one. But I think you laid it out, man. It's got to be the best player on the best team, and that team has to be a clear front runner. So you're looking back at the Mark Ingram situation, where he was the best player on a best team that didn't have a really good quarterback. Before that, it was Reggie Bush. We don't have a guy like that that's going to get the all-purpose yards, returning kicks like he did, shattering those records. I could see Fournette or Chubb breaking some records, and that's what they're going to need to do. They're going to need a Heisman moment. They're going to need some clear, objective record breaking of whatever purpose. If that's breaking Herschel's records at Georgia, that'll help. For Fournette, I don't know, is it an SEC record of some sort maybe. But Chubb will need to have a good game against Bama. They'll have to win that game, and then they'll have to go to the playoffs. And then I think in that case he is the favorite. He's the front runner. If LSU's looking at the playoffs, then I think Fournette's got to be the front runner, in my opinion, just because he's blatantly the best player on that team. Let me get rid of this guy real quick.
See you later, Chubb.
Yeah, as the season's going, even though it's so early, I've gone more to the side of thinking it's actually possible. 2 weeks ago, I would have said no running back can win the Heisman. It just can't happen. But they're getting a lot more hype this year than you see usually. There's not a lot of quarterback hype going on in the country. The guys do be named, like Mayfield. I mean, he's having a great year, and you're just not hearing much about it. And the media seems to be absolutely loving the running backs. And no matter what anyone says, the media absolutely plays a role in who people think should be the Heisman Trophy winner. So I think the media jumping on board that the running back idea is really going to push that, and just the lack of quality quarterbacks on top teams. So, I mean, I'm not going to repeat. You guys have said all the names. We're going to keep moving along into a Heisman-esque conversation. Once again, as always, my absolute favorite conversation in sports, the reverse Heisman. I kind of want to start moving to a season-long Heisman rather than just the week. As we get further into the season, you can give me both if you want, if you got both ready. So we're going to start that off. Kyle?
Well, I'll go ahead and keep shitting on Georgia Tech as we have done for the last 20 minutes. Justin Thomas has been bad for at least the last 2 weeks, and he hasn't been that impressive over the whole year. Especially his career, he's a 28.4% career completion percentage. That's awful. I know he's not a passer. I know they run the triple option. That's so pretty bad. Last week he had a whopping 58 yards on 24 carries. He also threw and completed 6 passes out of 21 for 148 yards with a pick and an interception. That's not going to get it done against Duke. He's my reverse Heisman.
Doobie, who's awful?
My reverse Heisman, and as of right now, I guess I can keep them as my season long because technically they're still considered a contender. But even though they won this week, Oklahoma State quarterback Mason Rudolph was just absolutely atrocious in the second half. I mean, Oklahoma State is probably the most fraudulently ranked team of the undefeated teams in there right now. I don't think they really are going to be anything come season end. But as they are in there now, that kid was just floating passes to Texas guys. And granted, I heard he injured his finger a little bit. But, Texas's defense was god-awful before that game. They had not caused anything. They hadn't stopped anybody. And Mason Rudolph was making them look like, Clemson's defense or something. It was ridiculous. In addition to that, he fumbled a ball that was returned for a touchdown. Oklahoma State had no business winning that game, as we've talked about already. Texas's kicking game seems to have been hired by Mac Brown, who's vindictive against his old university or something like that, because I can't even fathom how that can keep happening. But, Mason Rudolph, they should start J.W. Walsh. I don't care if he can't throw the ball and can only run. He seemed to be more successful. They play him in the red zone anyways. Get rid of that Rudolph kid until Christmas time.
Trevor, that's a tough one to follow up.
That's a great line, man. How long have you been saying on that, objectively? Honestly.
I dreamt about it last night. Me and Mason Rudolph were on a long journey to find Santa Claus.
Honestly, I was going to go with Justin Thomas. I even had the same stats pulled out. And part of that is it goes back to the old adage. As soon as you start believing in Georgia Tech, that's when they'll start letting you down. And Justin Thomas is doing that right now. I was telling everyone, again at a bar, which is apparently usually where I make my just really dumb statements. I was telling everyone Georgia Tech was a legitimate playoff team, and then they go and lose 2 straight. So there you go. Always bet against me. If I had another one, because that one got picked, I would say the Big 12 refs. I don't know if we're allowed to do that, but the officiating in the Texas game was terrible. That offensive holding call, I don't know what the hell they were looking at, but, that was awful. And it was a huge momentum changer.
Yeah.
And then they flagged strong, which I really,
15
as an official,
yards.
the last thing you want to do is change the game. And they changed the game.
Yeah, going back to the Mason Rudolph, Oklahoma State had stopped throwing the ball because he was that bad. They couldn't throw the ball. They needed to get into territory, and they got 40 yards on penalties. Without those calls, they lose that game.
It was crazy. That offensive holding call, the kid, he was literally just getting manhandled. I don't even know what they saw, because he was a victim of severe assault. So I don't know what they were looking at, man. That was tough.
Yeah, good for Strong that he didn't lose his absolute shit in the post-game presser. He contained himself way better than I think 99% of human beings would have.
99% of coaches even would have flipped out on that one.
Yeah, it was awful.
All right, we're going to move right along. We're going to talk about ranking of the Power 5 conferences. Always a fun conversation where everybody in the world always agrees on the list. So, Kyle, what kind of list do you got for us today?
Yeah. All right, so I kind of went back and forth with number 2 and number 3. I've got the SEC up top. I think the SEC is very competitive from top to bottom. That's pretty much the main reason that they're on the top. I'd like to say the Pac-12 is as well. Unfortunately, last week didn't really help their cause. Oregon getting beat up, Arizona State getting beat up, all that kind of stuff. Kind of hurts me, but I've got
Oh, Jesus.
All right. I think he's mad at you for talking crap about his Pac-12, but
Yeah, it's fine.
I got the Pac-12 second. It was hard for me not to put the Big Ten second because they've got 2 of the top 5 teams in the country, Michigan State and Ohio State. We'll see if that's there towards the end. And a shocker, it's going to be 4-1 after this week, but Indiana being 4-0 can only help the Big Ten. Big 12 is 4th, and then after the ACC's really subpar week in the bottom half, I've got them last. Bums me out to say that, but the truth is in the numbers. So
I will just jump in and say I didn't actually cause that crash. But I was thinking, it's kind of rough to say that because Oregon has a tough show and the Pac-12 therefore isn't as tough, because it was Utah that was beating them up, and Utah looks really good to the extent that you think Oregon was any good. So I don't know about that, but I'll keep it.
Fair enough. But all I'm saying is that Oregon, I don't think they have a quarterback. I'm not sure if Vernon Adams is the answer, but
right.
they could very easily go and lose a couple more games. I mean, they got some absolute cakewalks over the next couple weeks, but
it's a perception thing for Oregon. This is the first time I believe I heard today in like 5 or 6 years that they've been first week in like 5 or 6 years they have not been in the AP top 25. So they've really
since
been
2009.
They've really been the team for the Pac-12 for so long. To see them struggle, it does hurt the perception of the overall league, even if that's a very unfair perception.
absolutely.
All right, Doobie, what's your list?
That's a perfect lead-in for me. SEC is number one, although I do think they get an absolutely ridiculously unfair bump in the media polls and the AP polls because they're in the SEC. It's clear to everyone that they are the best conference in the country. I mean, LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss at this point, although I don't think it lasts. You should be very impressed with the SEC and think that they 100% get someone in the playoff. They're the only conference that I can say I'm 100% confident will get a team in the playoff. My number two, I've actually got the Big 12 number two. If you look at it right now, they actually have the most playoff contenders behind the SEC. When you look at a TCU, who probably will fall off because of attrition, but they're still in it. You've got Baylor very much still in it. You've got Oklahoma, which definitely is a big name, will get a media bump if they start winning. Dark horses like West Virginia and other ones that I don't believe in, like Oklahoma State, but they're definitely a formidable conference. I wanted to rank the Big Ten number two. The reason that I didn't was because of the fact that they took a hit this week with their major wins all losing. You look at Ohio State, their big win is against Virginia Tech, who is a dumpster fire that just lost to ECU at home. You look at Michigan State, they almost lost to Vernon Adams, who looks to be about the equivalent of the West Coast Jeremy Johnson. So that gives them a hit. That being said, you got to give them credit. Their top three teams in Ohio State, Michigan State, and Northwestern have all beaten Power 5 teams from other conferences. So you got to give them that bump. My bottom two, and I honestly went back and forth between this. Trevor, you're not going to like this at all, but I do have the Pac-12 at number 4 and the ACC at number 5. I think the ACC, their performance this week was so god-awful that there's no way I could rank them anywhere but the cellar. That being said, if we look at these conferences, they are not that different. You know, the ACC has more undefeated teams actually than the Pac-12. They have the bottom two are Miami and NC State, but then you've got Clemson and Florida State at the top. If you look at it, Cal, Utah, and UCLA are the only undefeated teams in the Pac-12. If you've got to take Florida State, Clemson, and Miami and put them up against Cal, Utah, and UCLA, which one are you taking in a round robin of those games? I take the ACC in that every time. I think that the Pac-12
has Notre Dame with us too, since we play 5 games.
I don't count Notre Dame. If I count Notre Dame, I think the ACC is above the Pac-12. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's without a doubt. But the Pac-12 has just been entirely disappointing. I've been calling it since the beginning of the season, but when you look at it now, you've got Utah and Stanford. Those are, in my opinion, they're two banner teams, and that's because they don't play football like the rest of the Pac-12 does. They play like hard-nosed, big, strong teams, and they look to be the mold of someone like an Ohio State that can take down a team from the South that has speed just because they're so big and strong and play old school football. So, I don't like the Pac-12, but Utah's making me believe. Utah is honestly looking like a good team. So that's my rankings right there. ACC, unfortunately, at the bottom.
All right, Trevor, how high do you have the Pac-12?
I honestly don't like them that much. I was just playing a little devil's advocate. I've been listening to the feedback, man. They want to see some tension. They want to see some fighting. I'm giving the people what they want. No, I got them 4th. I got the ACC 5th. Where I'm a lot different is I'm putting the Big Ten at 1 right now.
Wow.
I think that's because my inclination is to go SEC, but when I look at it realistically, I have a lot of questions about the SEC. I think the best SEC team is Bama, and they already got a loss. Given it was a fucking fluke, in my opinion. Excuse my language, but so I don't know. I mean, when you're talking about their playoff shots, I am starting to believe actually that the SEC could not have a team in the playoff. it would require a lot of cannibalization to go on, but I could see that happening now way more than I could have seen that happening 4 weeks ago when I would have said that you can go to the bank that the SEC will always have a playoff team. I just think it'll be really hard for people to escape without having 2 losses, because I think Georgia gets Bama in Athens, and I think Georgia does something stupid, like gets beat by Tennessee or Florida, and then also gets beat by Tech at the end of the year. So, I mean, and I see that all across the SEC. I see that happening. Big Ten, I just think Michigan's looking tougher. You got to give them credit. MSU's looking good, and then they have the best team in the nation right now, although huge questions at quarterback position. Big 12 is looking solid, although I have my doubts about TCU at this point. So it goes Big 10, SEC, Big 12, and then Pac-12, ACC.
So I gotta say, personally, I'm a little shocked. I'm shocked you have the Big Ten won. The Big Ten has not shown me anything yet. I thought they did in that Oregon game, but Oregon just get waxed at home. So Michigan State beating them in a close game at home, it doesn't impress me that much anymore. And Ohio State doesn't have an impressive game yet. I mean,
the most impressive team was Northwestern, honestly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and so that actually factors into it, though, right? Because Northwestern isn't even one of the more impressive teams in that.
They only beat Ball State by 5.
Right,
Yes.
But they also beat Stanford, and it's looking like Stanford might be a little better. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I'm just going right now, honestly, like I said, I'm trying to counteract my own inclination to go SEC bias. I have questions about them, but I think there are questions all across the board right now. I don't think we've seen a team really break away from the pack. I'm just giving Ohio State kind of the benefit of the doubt. I think they have the most talent of any team on the nation, but they have huge problems. Clearly. I just think the coaching staff will be able to figure out. Part of what goes into that is they have such a shitty schedule early on that I think they have the time to fix their problems. Whereas if you have questions in the SEC, you get into conference play and you're going to start losing games.
That's very true.
So that's part of what goes into that.
That's the same for ACC too. I mean, generally, ACC plays the SEC in a lot of early season games, but a team like Florida State, our schedule has left a lot of time for us to figure things out.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. So
It seems like it happens that way every year, which is great. But
I'm calling it right now. If the offense has not scored more than the touchdown in the first half against Wake Forest, that Golson's getting pulled from McGuire this weekend.
okay, now, all right, here's my thing, and you probably just led us into the next topic here. The judgment of graduate transfer QBs right now makes me so angry. You just said it, Palmer, and our friends who do the other podcast of our friends that do the betting podcast, FSU Takes on Vegas. Very enjoyable podcast. But Alexander Dominguez and now you, Palmer, who just said that Everett Golson potentially could get pulled for Sean McGuire, makes me want to pull all of my teeth out on camera. That is the most absurd thing I think I've heard in a long time. Everett Golson, during that Boston College game, had been with the offense for 7 weeks. All of these grad transfers have been with their teams for such a small amount of time. How can you expect to actually see what they're doing? Please don't judge Golson until we have an actual picture. Now, if we go out against Wake and we don't show a full offense, maybe we start blaming Jimbo for not giving Golson the opportunity to succeed because he has not had anything. We haven't been running any packages for him that highlight his strengths. We have not been doing anything. He has gotten no blocking. You brought it up last week. We're getting 2 major offensive linemen back in Cole Minishaw and Chad Maverty. Florida State's going to be a very different team on offense, and once Golson actually has the weapons to succeed, I think all the people like you, Palmer, and like you, Alex Dominguez, if you ever listen to this, which you probably won't, will be eating a lot of crow and looking very silly when Golson shows himself to be a great quarterback who just needed time to acclimate to the offense.
See, my problem with Golson comes from what I hear from our coaching staff, and it's that McGuire is the better passer. Period. McGuire is more accurate. He is a better passing quarterback. Golson's in the game because Golson can move and Golson can run. Golson has refused to pull on a single zone read, which they were running from early in the season, and he would not pull the ball. And defenses stopped being threatened by it, and they just knew it was going to be the running back every time. When he was scrambling, apart from that great scramble against Boston College, he hasn't scrambled well. He hasn't used mobility well. If he's not going to use his mobility, he's useless out there.
He hasn't been set up by Fisher to do so. And in addition, you say that McGuire has been so great. The only sample size that I view on McGuire, this is like people talking about people performing great in a spring game. The only thing that I care about McGuire is what I've seen of him in a real game. And against Clemson, his accuracy was about as good as Palmer you would be if you were playing for West Virginia.
Which is still better than Golson's been this year.
That's ridiculous. Golson has not thrown that bad. He has had receivers that have not performed well for him on the outside. I can't handle it. It's ridiculous to judge a kid. It's the same with Grayson Lambert at Georgia. Kid goes out, throws 23 or 24, and I still hear people questioning the Georgia QB situation. I think that the kid's shown himself to be solid, and I think that everyone needs to start giving these people more credit. They're in an offense for less than two months, and they're already doing decent with it.
Well, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive.
One thing Golson hasn't done is turn the ball over.
Yes, that's another thing, which is what everyone said he was going to do, and he hasn't done it. And he's
you're right. He hasn't been overly impressive. I understand that. But you give him a bye week. Rehab does absolutely nothing. You give him a game at Wake Forest where you can work in more of a package. I think you see a lot more improved Everett Golson. Shoot, I think if you throw any of those grad transfers, into the fire in this kind of media where people are constantly analyzing what they're doing, you're going to see only the bad parts because that's what people harp on and that's what people want to see. That's what people want to hear about. People don't want to hear about a grad transfer coming in and absolutely dominating because that makes it sound like it's too easy to just run around everywhere. So. I mean, I don't know. I think
Trevor. I want Trevor to get a little word in here, but we do have to move on this topic. So, Trevor.
Just real quick, I was going to say that you can actually respect what a guy's doing and still have some questions. So going at Lambert, I totally respect what he's done. I mean, his efficiency has been out of this world. I think he was 9 for 10 last game. Before that, he set that record. Obviously, he's playing really well. I think a lot of the credit goes to Schottenheimer for calling him plays where he can be successful. There are a lot of those slants that they're doing. They're hitting the outside, short routes. But I still have questions about his legitimate ability to threaten deep down the field. And that's, I'm not trying to harp on it. I think if all he does is just prove to be a really efficient short route passer, that's probably enough to open up the field for Michelle and Chubb. But I can have questions about that. Golson, I'm not as familiar as you guys are, so I won't jump in, but I do know that it looks like he's struggling a little bit, and I think a lot of that, Jimbo has said, goes to trying to learn the offense, and I believe that. I think it's incredibly difficult for these guys to come in and pick up these offenses that big-time college programs run now. I mean, the guys are so good. They basically run professional offenses. It's really hard for them to come in and perform at a really high level right away.
All right, I'm sure we could all talk about this for another half hour, but we got a lot left on the agenda, so we're going to move along here. That's it for college. We'll do a very quick preview of next week. Just let everyone give one game they're looking forward to. Kyle.
I'm excited to see if Clemson can finally win a big game on national television. Clemson Notre Dame game day will be there. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'll leave the Georgia-Bama stuff to you guys.
Newbie.
I got to give credit to Andrew Schellenberg, who is another guy on another podcast who seems to like to shit on us as much as possible. But I do like your podcast, Andrew, and I will give you credit, although I didn't on Twitter on Saturday night when I was drinking. I think that UF upsets Ole Miss this weekend. I think that UF is very similar to that 2012 team where no one thought they could do anything, and then they somehow end up 10-2. I like UF coming out of that game, so I'm looking forward to watching that.
Trevor, I know what your answer is going to be.
It's got to be Bama. Bama Dogs. Athens is going to be electric. It's going to be a lot of fun. I actually have no desire to watch Clemson Notre Dame. I just think that game is going to be ugly. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, though. Eric?
All right, yeah. I mean, just because I'm going to be in Athens, I'm going to have to say that it's Bama, Georgia for me as well. I'm looking forward to it. This town's going to be a madhouse, but it'll be a very, very fun weekend. All right, so we're going to move right into NFL here.
Dogs by 2 touchdowns.
What was that?
Dogs by 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
Nope. I'm not going to complain about it, but
I think we'll get 10 by 10.
All right.
Which guarantees now that we're going to lose by probably like 20 points.
Also, the first time Alabama has not been favored in something like 72 games. So
I think it's 2009.
All right, let's move on now. We're getting sidetracked really easily today. We're going to go into the NFL. Once again, we didn't pick extremely well. Two guys actually picked fantastically as far as spreads go for NFL games, and that's Trevor. Oh wait, no, it's only one person because Siri's not here. He actually did terrible. Don't listen to that.
Yeah, Siri did
Um,
awful.
So Trevor, who proclaims himself as not the NFL guy, went 10-5 with spread picks and 11-4 straight up, which I'm confused because it looks like that's correct, and that's without tonight's game. Looks like all of us except we all have Green Bay winning except for Doobie in this one.
I picked Kansas City straight up.
Yep.
I'm an idiot.
The picks, I'm assuming, aren't the best thing for the audience, and since we're way behind schedule, we're gonna move on. We'll go over all of our records next week a little more. We'll go into individual performances. Who was y'all's worst individual performance of Week 3 in the NFL? Kyle.
I talked a bunch about tight ends and how awesome they were last week. They followed that up, most of them anyway, with pretty much nothing. Tyler Eifert specifically. Since he had a great day throwing the football all over the place, and he had 0 catches for 0 yards. So he was my worst performance of the week.
All right, Doobie.
Easily Ryan Tannehill of the Miami Dolphins. Ryan Tannehill used to be a wide receiver. They might as well have put rookie wide receiver Devontae Parker at quarterback because he was so awful. It just a really atrocious performance in every way. Dolphins look worse than I could have ever imagined them to. I don't think they come out of this season with an above 500 record, and Tannehill does not look worthy of his contract.
Trevor, who's the worst player on the week?
I got Kaepernick, 9 for 19, 67 yards, no TDs. That's a rough week. So I'm going him. They get absolutely embarrassed by the Cards.
Cards may be one of the best teams in the NFL, if not the best team in the NFL. But Kaepernick was absolutely atrocious. Two pick sixes in his first 4 throws. You don't come back from something like that.
Right.
Luck was looking like he was going to turn that kind of performance in. Somehow turned it on late use of magic to get the win, so he pulled himself out of this conversation, luckily. So now we're going to move to exact opposite, best performance by an individual. Kyle.
Devontae Freeman, 30 carries, 141 yards, scored 3 times. Go Noles.
5 catches, 52 yards on top of that, by the way.
Yep.
Doobie.
I'll continue the Noel trend. Carlos Williams. Carlos Williams currently leads the NFL in yards per carry with a minimum of 20 carries. He is carrying for above 7 yards a carry. He had a 40-yard touchdown. I think he probably is going to unseat Shady McCoy as the workhorse for that offense, and Shady is just going to kind of be the guy getting the balls in the swing pass game. Carlos, what really the reason I named him over Devonta Freeman is this guy's only been a running back for less than 3 years. It's going to be a sight to see this guy, what the potential he has in the NFL. He could be one of the best guys out there. He's an absolute freak. You saw him pull away from the defense on that long run like nothing I've ever seen. Good to see a Noel doing that type of thing.
First running back ever to score a touchdown in his first 3 professional games, by the way, in the history of the NFL.
He's the second in the NFL, but it's his first since '86, I think I read.
First since '86. Okay, I thought I read that first.
Trevor. It was small.
I'm going Andy Dalton. I know I mentioned him earlier. I think he's a guy that doesn't get a lot of respect. He's not a sexy name for whatever reason, but he had a really good performance, 383 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's not one of the skill position guys, so it's probably not as exciting to pick, but I think he had a really good game. I think he's a big reason why they're doing so well right now.
It's nice to have A.J. Green out there when you're throwing the ball, right?
It's true. It always helps. It always helps.
So we're going Noels and dogs a little bit there. Give A.J. Green a shout out. All right. So now we're going to move on to something we were going to talk about last week. It's even better conversation this week, really. Will any of the current 0-3 teams make the playoffs, Kyle?
I don't think so. The 4 that I've got are Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, and New Orleans. I don't think any of those 4 are going to get there. The only one that maybe could is the Ravens, with the Steelers having Big Ben out. The Ravens might be able to work their way back into that division, but I don't see any of them getting back to a respectable record that could get them in.
Trevor, go ahead.
Same. I don't see any of them making it. I think pretty much those are indicative of the talent level that those teams have right now.
Doobie, any current 0-3 teams you think will make the playoffs?
No, but I think the Ravens will make it very interesting. I think that they'll make a late season push. I think that the AFC East is way too good for the Ravens to actually get in, as well as the AFC North. So I think they make it real interesting, but I don't think they do it.
See, last week when we were going to have this on 0-2 teams, you had teams like Seattle and Indianapolis in there, so that conversation changes a lot. You think either of those teams make the playoffs, guys?
I think both.
Yeah, I think they do.
Seattle, at least. I'm not sure about Indy right now.
Just because the AFC South is so weak. I don't think they're a playoff-worthy team, but that division is garbage.
Right.
So maybe a little more to talk about here with 3-0 teams that will not make the playoffs, considering we got two in one of what's usually the weakest divisions in football with Atlanta and Carolina.
I don't think Carolina gets there. I think Cam Newton comes down from his high horse for a couple pretty average games. That's really the only team that I've got. I think Atlanta runs the ball effectively. Their defense kind of sucks, but they'll figure that out. And they play in the NFC South. They're going to get W's against the Bucs. Going to get W's against the Saints. So,
Doobie.
I go the opposite way here. Sorry to insult the Athens boys up there, but I don't think the Falcons make the playoffs. I just don't see any way possible that that defense sustains the success that they've had to this point. I think Dan Quinn's an absolute defensive genius, but I don't think he can make that team swing that fast in that short a period of time. Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman are great stories, but they're not going to be successful against good run defenses either.
Trevor.
I keep doubting Denver, and they keep proving me wrong, so I'm just going to stay on that train. I don't think they pull it out. Palmer, you were the one that called it earlier in the season. Peyton doesn't look like Peyton, and I just legitimately question if you can make it to the playoffs in the NFL without having a consistent quarterback. I don't know that they have it right now. I also think that division is just really interesting right now. I think the Raiders, going back again to the first episode, I think they're better than people thought they were. Maybe not actually a good team, but I think good enough to maybe screw up Denver down the line.
The Chargers really disappointed me this week.
Their O-line is terrible. And, they also have more injuries on the O-line. Rivers, he's going to go down as one of the best quarterbacks with the worst overall performances. You can chalk it up to his O-line. He just hasn't had it since, I was in high school, probably.
Yeah, he's never had any real talent around him, honestly.
No. He's always had decent receivers, some good running backs, although Matthews was not the best. He had the injury problems. But the O-line has really been a problem. And it's disappointing that the front office hasn't acknowledged that and tried to make it better.
Doobie, on your Falcons to not make the playoffs, just take a look at their schedule. Might be the easiest in the NFL. My girlfriend's a big Falcons fan, pointed that out to me this weekend. I looked at it, and I was in shock. They really have a nice path. They don't have to play that well against that schedule to make a playoffs, especially with starting 3-0.
I will say I haven't looked at their schedule, so that could change my opinion on it.
It's shockingly easy, actually. I don't know what the numbers say, but it's got to be one of the bottom as far as difficulty goes. So that was our quick little NFL talk tonight. We're going to move into a little.
Palmer,
yeah.
Before we move on to quick MLB stuff,
yeah.
I got a question from a live listener. Mr. Nicholas Hall asked, "What's the protocol on changing your team? Do you have to burn regalia? Do you have to take a year off?" He wants to know how you get rid of the constant letdown of the Miami Dolphins, just in general. What are your
Normally I'd say you never change your teams, but if you're a fan of any team from South Florida, I think I fully allow it. I think all you have to do is just honestly with South Florida, you just got to admit that it's a horrible sports town and that you never want to go watch another sporting event there and then just get out.
Or if you were stupid enough to choose a South Florida team as your favorite team, you might as well just put all the clothes on and set yourself on fire.
So there you go, Nikki. That your advice is to set yourself on fire. That's how you change your team. Oh my goodness! But the rule is, if you burn any jerseys with a guy's name on it, you can't go then buy it when he comes back to your city a few months later and act like you loved him the whole time.
Miami.
So we're gonna move on to a little bit of baseball. I know we're running a little long. If you don't feel like continuing to watch, you suck. Because we're gonna have some fun talk about some choke slams right now. We're gonna start off the baseball talk. I'm sure anyone that has a pulse and likes sports is aware that Papelbon started jawing at Harper for not hustling, even though Harper wasn't really not hustling that much. It was kind of an interesting thing that he was jawing at him the way he was, but I think he was mad that Harper previously in the game, I believe the previous game, had gotten mad that Papelbon had hit the opposing team's star player because Harper knew that he was then going to get hit later in the game. So they started jawing. Harper seemed to get a little more vocal at one point in the dugout when Papelbon straight up grabbed him by the throat and tried to slam him into the benches and the back of the dugout. There was a brawl. There's a whole issue with the coaches that I'll get to if no one else does. But anything you want to talk about this at all, Kyle, start us off.
Yeah, the main point that I'll make, and I saw this in a couple articles that I read today. First of all, closers just chill in the clubhouse till like the 5th inning. They're like getting the rub down, eating the fucking sandwich, just like hanging out. So for Papelbon to be the first guy on that first step to tell him that he's not running a ball out to probably the NL MVP is just an absolute joke to me. I've never been a fan of Papelbon and the way he kind of alienates his teammates. He'll throw people out under the bus all the time in press conferences and stuff. I just thought that was a joke. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Bryce Harper, and I love him because he's been a fantasy guy for me for the last 4 years, but that was uncalled for in my opinion, just from Papelbon. And of course he's going to react like that. I mean,
I thought the issue was that Harper, in a press conference, took issue with Papelbon throwing at a guy.
Yeah, because he then knew he was going to get hit later in the game. He's like, yeah, it sucks. Like, yeah, then I'm going to get thrown at, and so yeah, that's what started the dispute between them the day before.
So besides being a phenomenal t-ball player, I haven't played baseball in a while since I took issue with balls and strikes at the age of like 10, and threw a huge fit. But as I understand, there is that unwritten code, and I think one of the big ones is that you don't say something like that in the media if you're a guy like Harper. So yeah, it seems like Papelbon was kind of being a dick, but I think this is like fairly standard baseball procedure, and I kind of like that stuff. I think it's neat. You got a veteran guy. He's trying to keep a younger guy from letting his ego get out of check. He's obviously been phenomenal. He's a great player. But I don't know. I kind of like that. I'm kind of curious. Sorry to jump in there on it.
You like him arguing, or you like the fact that he choke slammed him into the benches?
Yeah. So probably going over the top with the choke slam. But no, I like him having a word with Harper. I mean, yeah, you don't want to choke slam a guy. That's usually not great. As someone who has to take the bar in a few months here, I don't think I can be on the record advocating for physical violence. But I like him as a veteran player saying, hey, man, you got to hustle that out. And, that's not actually getting at the issue, but it's kind of creating a dialogue. I'm curious to see how this story develops, if we hear any more or if they kind of squeeze the media out from here on forward.
Doobie.
Yeah, I agree and totally disagree with you, Trevor. I mean, Bryce Harper is I've never had a problem with him like a lot of other people do. I think he is a spoiled brat, and I think he probably does have an absolutely terrible attitude, and I think he does deserve a talking to every once in a while. This wasn't the time, though. He wasn't really dogging it that bad. Papelbon, I think, was just frustrated that he got traded to a team that should have been a contender and wasn't, or something else is going on in his life. I mean, hopefully it's not his wife cheating on him something, but it always could be. Philadelphia Phillies seem to have that problem in their past. But the person I really take issue with this is Matt Williams, the manager.
Thank you.
Of the Nats, because he came out and he goes, this is a family issue. We'll treat this as a family issue. This is something that is private between us. It's not private when the closer of your team choke slams your star player and the NL MVP in front of national audience. And another thing is, how is a closer, a guy, I think I read a stat he's played like less than 100 innings this year total, whereas
I was going to pull that out. Bryce Harper's played almost 1,000 more innings than Papelbon.
Yeah, and he's yelling at him for dogging it when he's batting .366 over 1,200 plus innings. I mean, that's ridiculous. But Matt Williams comes out and makes this thing. Clearly he's got no control over the team. he is a rag doll for Bryce Harper to punch at if Papelbon doesn't have him pinned up against the bench. But it's just, they go out and then they suspend Papelbon for 4 games after Matt Williams going, it's a family issue, we'll handle this internally. Oh, no, never mind, Matt, we're clearly firing you at the end of the year because we're just going to suspend Papelbon. It's god-awful. Natitude is probably the funniest word in the sports dictionary right now.
So I haven't liked the Nats at all. I lived up in D.C. and dealt with Nats fans. I don't like them. I don't like Bryce Harper, honestly, at all. I think he's cocky to a bad point. I think he's a great ball player. I just don't like watching him play. He bothers me. Maybe it's because I really like the Braves. I don't know. The Braves are my number 2 team. Had season tickets for a long time, and there's a little rivalry going there. Probably, I mean, I don't think I've liked a player disliked a player this much since Mike Piazza. And that's dude, I hate that guy. I hate that guy. And Cyril, get out of here. Cyril, what are you doing? He's muted. It doesn't matter. His video's not going to pop up. He's muted.
Bye. Go Pack, go.
Let's just okay. He's gone. Cyril wanted to let us know. Go Pack, go. Drunk at a bar. Thanks for that.
That was a good segue.
But
maybe as a Mets fan would be so pissed at that Piazza comment.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say they hated Mike Piazza, honestly, in my entire life.
Every Braves fan. Everybody that was a Braves fan at the time, I had season tickets when he used to play there.
He was just a good player. Do you hate him because he was
he was not, dude. He was a asshole when he was in Atlanta. It was, like, well documented. He was extremely rude to the
Mike
fans.
Piazza's an American hero. That's all I have to say about that.
Man. But see,
Chipper Jones is a terrible human being and does not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. That's not true.
And that's not the conversation for tonight. Chipper Jones is the man.
And I hate him.
You do not talk bad about Larry.
Chipper Jones is my least favorite player of all time.
You don't talk bad about Larry.
He's a gator.
But I'm going to go further in on Matt Williams than you because Matt Williams said after the game, because some people aren't realizing this, Papelbon came in and closed the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
In the game, they put him on the mound to close the game out. Matt Williams said, "Oh, there was a fight? I didn't know that had happened." So the manager is claiming that this brawl that took the entire team to break up, and all the coaches went over there and broke it up, that he didn't even know that it happened in his dugout. That's not just the most pathetic excuse I've ever heard from a manager. I don't know what is. I mean, he should have been fired on the spot for saying that comment. It's an absolute joke that he's managing a Major League Baseball team right now. All right.
That is a little bit like a high schooler when your parents come home and your house is trashed and you're like, "What? Like, I didn't even what? Where did this beer come from? I don't know."
There's just number one, there's no way he didn't know. Number two, if he actually didn't know, is that even worse? Maybe
then he's got to be ingesting a large amount of Quaaludes.
All right. What's y'all's thoughts on continuing through the baseball topics? We're at about an hour and 4 minutes right now.
I'd say just hit it quick.
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
fine.
So let's see who y'all came up with for this. One player that you think was the reason their team did not make the playoffs this year.
All right, well, I'll start.
And this can go a little bit predictive since it's not all set in stone yet.
Okay. The White Sox were supposed to, with their off-season free agent stuff, were supposed to be competitive at least in the American League. Jeff Samardzija really didn't figure it out all year. He struggled, especially lately. I think he had one good game and maybe his last 7 or 8 starts. He was supposed to be their big guy, and he was absolutely awful. So the reason I think that they struggled because Sale pretty much pulled his weight was because Samardzija didn't produce whatsoever.
Dugan, who you got?
Victor Martinez of the Detroit Tigers. Guy is old. He should never have performed like he did last year in the first place. But, if that team was going to succeed this year, they really needed him to perform at a level. He was injured for much of the season. When he came back, he was absolutely worthless. That's the most, of my opinion, the Tigers are the most fraudulent team not in the playoffs. That's an incredible lineup that rivals the Blue Jays as the best offense in the MLB. Victor Martinez, you're an old guy. Just go ahead and retire now, man. You're 37. We've had enough of you if you're not going to deliver.
He could be a switch-hitting designated hitter till he's 41, dude.
Yeah, well, he didn't deliver this year. What do you have, 41 RBIs?
Maybe.
Trevor, did you come up with something for this?
As a Padre fan, I'll say everyone not named Justin Upton kept the pods out.
That's fair enough.
That's good. That's good.
I think the fact that the Padres kept the Padres out, but
Yeah, I think, yeah.
No argument there from Trevor.
I was trying to think of like something funny to say, and there's just nothing. The Padres are the joke. Like, that's the punchline. Padres.
even when they do all this off-season stuff, like, hey, we're gonna go compete. No, you're not.
I almost said Matt Kemp, but that's not even fair to Matt Kemp because
He played
realistically,
great this year.
we were taking a gamble with him, and
Yeah.
it just didn't pay off. So,
No, he
yeah.
played. I mean, honestly, if you look at his stat line, Matt Kemp was.
I think he had
really
24
solid.
something like that.
He
Yeah.
was. I think statistically, he was in the top 5 across all categories when you composite them of all hitters in the NL. So Matt Kemp had a great year, especially in the second half. Just that whole team didn't gel together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tough when you bring in that
Well,
many new faces.
Yeah, maybe next year. You never know. I wouldn't count them out next year. They need some time.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things where even if the moves didn't work, at least they were exciting moves. It gave people in San Diego something to talk about, which, frankly, they haven't had in a long time, since probably Tony Gwynn. I don't think Padre fans have been optimistic since early 2000s. So it was a good offseason. It was too bad it didn't work out for him.
So, yes, I am an Angels homer, but Doobie actually made the agenda, so I'm actually going to bring this topic up. Will the Angels make the wild card? I bet I know the answer Doobie has.
My answer is probably the same as Perry's. So.
Is it no from everybody?
Yeah.
I'll go into my reasoning. You guys have to play a 3-game stretch starting tonight against the mighty Oakland Athletics.
I knew this was coming.
You're going to get swept by my boy Billy Burns, the big nerd Eric Sogard, also known as the Little Wizard. We've got Danny Valencia claiming him off waivers from Toronto. He's going to come in and smack Mike Trout's head into the ground. We're going to bury you and Mike Scioscia. Don't come to Oakland again. You're coming out in a body bag.
So I wish I could hate on you, but the fact is it's the top of the first, and the A's already have runners on the corners, the only one out, so the Angels,
right.
They're just going to choke this shit away. But they're only half a game back right now. I think they do it. They have I'm not really worried about this series as much. I think we take 2 of 1 against the A's, but then a 4-game series against the division-leading Rangers, that's really going to be what decides it, so that's going to be looking at. I still say they make it, and if they do, I think Mike Trout gets the MVP out of just that fact alone, even though I don't agree with it.
I do agree with you there, but I will say if the Angels find to take 2 games out of 1, they deserve to make the playoffs, as you just said.
Against the mighty Oakland A's.
That's impressive.
All right. So we're going to leave this topic for next week because we are well over an hour now.
Good call.
Yeah.
Just talking a little bit about the one-game playoff, the one-game wild card playoff, and how that's changed a little bit of the playoff scenario and whether it's good or not. We'll get into that next week. Another topic we've been wanting to get into for a while is the treatment of different athletes for crimes and how different athletes get treated based on race is a big factor. I think sport is a big factor. History is a big factor. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. We're going to get into that a little bit with the whole current Patrick Kane situation. Probably not many people are even aware about it, so look it up a little bit if you plan on watching. That looks like it's about it for the week. Any parting thoughts, guys?
I'm drinking a Labatt Blue now, another Canadian beer, brewed from Molson. Go Canada.
Go Canada, go Toronto, go Knowles.
Go Knowles.
Go Dogs. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs, go Knowles this weekend.
I'll even say go Dogs. I'm cheering for the Dogs this week.
Okay.
Usually.
We got one. We got one.
All right, guys. Everybody enjoy your nights. Hope you join us next time.